Hello, my name is Justin Bale, and in the following video, I'll be breaking down my journey through my affinity space and what I happen to learn along the way. So largely, this journey starts with my affinity, which, if we take a look, is going to start in a place about 20 years ago, playing games something like this, Tecmo Bowl. It's about 1989, and a very young version of me, which was very in love with football, still am. Grew up playing games like this. Soon it transitioned into other games such as Blitz. This. Maybe you all remember Blitz if you're familiar with football games. This was a big one in my life, but eventually, as the times changed, a new king took over, and we know this as Madden. Now I'll go way back. Let's go like Madden 2002. You can see how largely the game used to look pretty similar to today, although much more enhanced graphics. But a young version of me stopped playing this game around this time. I think this was the last one I played. It had Mike Vick on the cover, and you can see what the graphics kind of look like back in this day. So a young version of me kind of stopped playing around this time for various reasons. First of all, I kind of became an adult. I went away to after college, I got a job, and fast forward 15 years and to last summer, where I actually picked up Madden again. If you take a look here, we can take a look at 2018 and what it kind of looks like now. You can see there's, graphics wise, it's quite a bit different. But besides the graphics updates and different changes, what actually made me fall back in love with the game this last year is the ability for networked play and a lot of the new PlayStation 4 features that are offered. It really makes this experience pretty cool, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. In addition to getting into Madden the game itself, over the last year, I actually fell in love with a particular mode in specific called Mud Squads. Now, Mud Squads is basically the version of Madden where you are playing 3-on-3. Let me see if I can find a better example. Something like this. It's larger. We can actually take a quick look at an example. We have 3 players versus 3 players, and you can see how this requires quite a bit of extra level of attention and coordination. But I actually fell in love with this mode. It's pretty fantastic. It's quite a bit more complex than the 1v1, just normal Madden football experience. As you can see, but generally it's 3v3, so you have one person is the quarterback, one person is the running back, and one person is either running routes or blocking. Um, while this mode is really, really fun, it can also be super frustrating, especially if people are new to the game, or maybe they don't quite understand. Maybe they don't quite understand the tactics involved and how it differs from the solo experience. And so, as good as this mode can be, it can feel really bad. For this 3v3 Mud Squads mode, it's really hard to find, 2 other good teammates. So I went on a journey to find an affinity space or some sort of website or utility that I could use that would help me find better teammates. And what I ended up finding was a website called For the Win, and I've actually created an account in here. And within here, there's all sorts of different games, but you can find different partners or different cooperative players for various games. And you can see within here we have Madden. And then within the For the Win website, we also have a feature called Looking for Group. And this is a pretty handy feature. There are tools within the game itself to find people, but it's again, it's very random, and you never know what who you're going to be teamed up with. And since this mode takes a pretty high level of coordination, tools like this are pretty nice. So as you can see, I have created an account. I also created a listing. You can see this Looking for Group feature here, and this is the request that I put in some time ago. And in response to this Looking for Group request, I actually received many different requests from people out there. Basically looking to team. Receive some random messages such as, yo, we run great offense. You want to run D? Your defense is my offense. Do you have a coach? So I over the course of the next couple of weeks, I started receiving these sorts of requests and kind of narrowed in on a couple people that I really liked playing with. Along the way, I was introduced to a person with whom I'll call Vader. And Vader led me to a group, and what I will actually dig into as my primary source of my affinity space. It's actually a group that was created within the PlayStation Network. So as we can see here, this is a Madden 3v3 Squads group created within the PlayStation, within the PlayStation 4 network features. Really, this was created under the intention of finding like-minded people, finding people with an affinity that shared ours within Madden and within this Squads realm. This group acted as a hub for facilitating games, also as a place for communications. As we can see here, here are some examples. A lot of people just post random messages like, hey, can we get a game? And this really helps because, again, it's really hard to find, good people to play these Squads games. So just having a bucket of 20 or so people that are as into the game as you are, or at least, willing to get better, or willing to coordinate a little bit more, it makes a big difference. One other thing that went on a lot in these groups was we could discuss strategies, or change our teams, discuss certain players, talk about what we felt was strong at any given times. This community hub acted as a place for finding other people to play games with. Now, once you were in game, all sorts of information would be transferred from player to player. there was a real sense of camaraderie built up amongst the players in the team. One of the biggest observations that I had from being within this group was that people really did kind of push each other to make their teams better, talk about strategies, and also to just kind of prove to each other that they were contributing to the group as a whole. Now, one area where I felt like this space or this group differed from maybe the truest intention of an affinity space was this group was slightly exclusive. Now, it was never discussed, or there was never any people who founded the group. It was never meant to be primarily exclusive. Really, the group was just created under the notion that it was a place for good players. Now, what exactly that means, I don't know. That's probably open for an entire another report and research all on its own. How people view other people as good. But all this is to say that there was a certain baseline of skill that was kind of expected, for entry, into this group. And interestingly enough, this didn't really seem to cause any issue. It was, pretty flex and loose. It wasn't, we certainly weren't a group of elitists, but at the same time, there was definitely a slight barrier for entry. One very interesting thing was within this group and in this space was the ability to create long-lasting friendships. One of the members of the group that I played with often on my team, we played for months, and one day we had a revelation when we were playing, and we had a conversation. It went something like this. He said, hey, heads up, I'm not going to be online this weekend. I said, yeah, me neither. I'm going to be up in Aspen. And he goes, Aspen, Colorado? And I go, yeah, a friend and I are going to the X Games. I said, whoa, I didn't know you lived in Colorado. I'm going to be there as well with my fiance. And I said, wait a minute, you live, in Colorado, in Denver? And he said, yeah, and he told me where he lived, and come to find out, he lived 20 minutes away from me. Of all the observations that all the things that I did observe, that was probably the least expected one. So, another interesting thing about, the relationships that were created, and especially this relationship that I met with this person in real life, is, they wouldn't probably be the type of person that I would tend to associate if I met them through, normal channels. It really was our, bond for, wanting to play the game and having, a lot of fun with each other. It kind of allowed us to, maybe even overlook some personal issues. For instance, he's, fairly conservative. I might not be. He's a little bit younger than I am. Those sorts of things. But we didn't really, that really didn't factor into the equation. All we really cared about was playing together and having fun. In many ways, I believe this does enforce, one of the features of Guy and Hayes affinity spaces, that they're not, segregated by age. Older and younger people, judge others by their passion, desire to learn, and growing skills, not necessarily their age. And so that's definitely one highlight of this group, and one feature of an affinity space that I believe it really does reflect. In addition to not segregating by age, I also believe this affinity space, this qualifies as an affinity space For the kind of one of the main differentiators of an affinity space, which is, passion defines it, not necessarily race, gender, or disability. And I really do think that this group in this space exemplify this. We really do come together just for our passion. A lot of times in these groups, I tend to take on sort of an advanced research type of role, mainly because I'm usually trying to figure out what's the best for my own team. So it's pretty easy for me to share, with the larger group, just certain things that I find. One of these comes in my, my general ability with the games to lab things. For whatever reason, I don't mind being the guy that's running dumb repetitions over and over and over, trying to test things. I actually like that sort of thing. So that's one thing that I largely contributed to the group, as well as just in-game informal lessons about various things. One thing of note, I kind of became a defensive expert among the group, mainly because of like I mentioned, I do a lot of research, and I'm also pretty good at calling defense. I kind of understand it. I've done a lot of research and figured out a lot of different little tips and tricks along the way. So offer that kind of guidance in addition to labbing. In this way, I believe this does pattern one of the affinity space features, and that leaders in an affinity space, when they are leading, are designing mentors, resourcers, and enablers of other people's participation and learning, which I feel like I took on kind of one of these roles of just kind of tutoring people, and people would kind of naturally come and ask me questions about defense and certain players, that sort of thing. In addition to labbing and just kind of offering general defensive guidance, as well as just playing games with everybody, I also, over the last few months, I've created a few some video content related to really this Squads group, and as well as my experience with playing with Mud Squads and Madden in general this year. The first video is just a pretty short highlight video. Take a look here. You can see some of the advanced tactics. Here we only have 2 players. Normally you'd have a third player, another player to help you block. But you can see here what's going on. He snaps the ball, and you see I switch out to here. I can get a block on. He tosses the ball out and pretty much does the rest. You can see this move here. It's pretty sick. He just hurdles that guy, and voila. If we fast forward this one, there's another play that kind of highlights the cooperative ability. We pick this ball off way deep. You can see me switching into certain guys. We're trying to get blocks. We're trying to navigate guys out of the way. But there's a lot of different mini coordination going on here to achieve kind of some spectacular plays. So it's part of the reason why I love Mud Squads in general. In addition to that video, which is just more of like a hype video for our group and our affinity space, I've also created a Mud Squads primer. You can see this is pretty long, so I'm not going to go through this. If we look at here, you can actually just see this is kind of some notes and some things that I've learned in playing Mud Squads over the last season, and really just put it into a video. It's not high production value or anything, but it really does highlight some of these. For instance, it highlights some of these aspects that I've been talking about with MUT squads and how you can actually make different plays and all sorts of things. Learn the most about these spaces and just the times that we live in, the technology. The PS4 comes with all these tools that allow you to screen capture and record the video and cut up the video right from your right from your controller and upload it to YouTube. And this really does speak to the Games Plus environment that Guy and Hayes really speak to, and the PlayStation 4 itself really does promote these aspects kind of as a platform, and really it seems like games and game consoles as we move forward really have this this essence of Games Plus built right into their very existence. So now, in one major place that I feel like this group or this space really did differ, from maybe the spirit of an Affinity Space, was in this number 3 feature here from Guy and Hayes. Newbies, masters, and everyone else share a common space. And you could make an argument that perhaps the Affinity Space should include the larger picture and maybe things like for the win and this looking for group feature, which led me to this space. And maybe this would be a little bit more welcoming to newbies in the grand spectrum. However, this group was a little exclusive. I kind of pointed to this before. This definition here, it says Affinity Spaces do not segregate newcomers or newbies from masters. Our group in this Affinity Space, kind of by its origination, excluded newbies. So, is that in the same spirit? Not quite sure. Maybe this should just be defined as a group instead of an Affinity Space, but I do really feel like it hit most of the other checkboxes. Now, as I reflect, upon this whole process and journey, kind of getting back to the technology aspect, I just wanted to highlight this statement from Guy and Hayes that games that stress involvement of players as designers in the first sense by making the game design a core mechanic, facilitating modding, and encouraging robust design communities to develop around the game are, we believe, particularly good for fostering skills with technology, design, system thinking, and socio-technical engineering. And one of the ways that my understanding of games and learning has changed the most, and my perception has changed the most, really is just the amazing ability of all this technology that we have at our fingertips, or in this case at our controllers. Just the technological advancements in networking alone. For instance, when I was playing Tecmo Bowl and Madden by myself when I was a teenager, I could really only become the king of my block or the king of my neighborhood, and I could never really test those skills beyond that, right? But now with the rise of these technologies, I can actually test myself against the best in the world, right? And then these other technologies provide an ability to find other like-minded people and really achieve greater things than you could on your own. Just to harken back to this Games Plus environment, really all of the skills, if you think about it, just that I've learned and used, really over just playing with this game. The PlayStation 4 alone, there's the screen sharing, video creation capabilities, group chat, voice communication within the game, private messaging, YouTube and Facebook, to share all these things kind of instantly. And then we take a look at this, make it a little bit bigger here. And we take a look at these three kind of definitions of affinity. I found this kind of interesting. If you read this kind of top to bottom, this kind of reads as the steps, or at least the steps that I interpret, of involvement for affinity spaces. It starts with a spontaneous or natural liking or sympathy for someone or something. There's a similarity of characteristics suggesting a relationship. So, out of this interest, you start sparking. Ultimately, you forge relationships. There's one central theme that keeps repeating itself, throughout this experience, and that is relationships with a purpose. I keep coming back to this in my mind because, really, as I think about what differentiates the relationships here from, the relationships that I've created elsewhere in life. And really, it is that affinity, right? You have that common interest and that guiding passion. Whereas other relationships in life might be, they might be forged by personality, traits, or maybe by blood, or by school, or in some ways, forced. Affinity space relationships, really are relationships with a purpose.